Chapter 9. The Three Binary Gates. So imagine it's your first week on the new job, and among your many duties that week, you're given a packet of information from the HR department and the finance department. One of the pages in that packet indicates your company's 401k terms with employer matching. You pick up that form, read it over, take it home, talk over it with your spouse, eventually sign it, and then send it back to the finance department. It's a good deal, one you'd decide you'd be crazy not to take. Well, those actions of picking up, reading, taking home, signing, sending back, as well as the action of allowing the direct withdrawal from your paycheck are all driven by principles, right? I mean, you're doing it because you have values or principles that guide your life, including your finances. Underneath the surface of all your actions are all of your life principles on everything from finances to food intake, from parenting to physical fitness. And it's reasonable to assume that those guiding principles in this case of your 401k might read something like, well, always be socking money away for retirement, always have money on hand for a rainy day, don't live paycheck to paycheck, save, take a good deal when you see one, invest wisely. Well, as mentioned previously, it's not really the principles that are guiding your life, not ultimately. For below the behaviors and actions of your life, and below the principles that drive them, are the real drivers of your entire operating system, your core beliefs. Beliefs, by definition, can neither be proven or disproved, or they can be both proven and disproved. They are generally greatly infused with, if not the outright direct result of, tremendous fear, as well as some aspiration, but mostly fear. They are something you believe, often quite apart from logic, and they are much more powerful than principles, much more compelling. In the case of the 401k, the likely core beliefs driving both the principles and eventually the actions run something like, life is uncertain, we lose the ability to make money as we age, life is scary, life is unpredictable, oh, it would be horrible to be dependent on others. The worst thing that can happen to me is to be destitute. I'm afraid of getting old. What if I lose my job? Every single one of those beliefs can be both proven and disproved. Life is uncertain, but it's also quite predictable. Many do lose the ability to make money as they age. Yet, a great many actually make more money the older they get, if only by compounded interest alone. Life is, or can be, scary, but it's also quite routine and unintimidating. It could be bad to be dependent, but it also could be an unexpected delight, at least for a while. It could be the worst thing to be destitute, but it also is in no way life's scariest thing to be destitute. Surely the death of a loved one, particularly a child, would be infinitely worse. So again, these are core beliefs, something you hold to be true, regardless of logic, reason, or provability. Yet, because they are driven by your greatest fears and most compelling aspirations, they are far more powerful than mere principles. It is your core beliefs that are truly driving your actions. Principles and values are about how you appear to others, how you explain yourself. Beliefs are the real reason you're doing what you're doing, up on the level of actions and behavior patterns. As mentioned in the last chapter, change those beliefs down at the core, even slightly, and everything else changes quite radically. By the time you get up through principles to the level of actions, even the tiniest adjustment of beliefs will bring about a radical change in behaviors, whether it's regarding investments and a 401k or something even more important. The fundamental mistake many therapists and clergy make, not to mention well-intentioned friends, is the hyper-focus on actions or behaviors. For it is on the surface of life that our problems manifest. So it is quite natural to believe that is where the solution lies, but it doesn't. Trying to change behaviors never changes behaviors, at least not in the long term. It's in the business of beliefs that the exciting and lasting stuff really happens. The three binary gates. Still, underneath all of the actions and principles is something even more powerful than the core beliefs, something that runs the whole machine, something even the core beliefs answer to. They are what I call the three binary gates. They rest on top of each other, hovering above the soul, but below the core beliefs. A person can have the most wonderful and fulfilling actions, the most detailed and logical principles, and the most positive and functional core beliefs. But if any of the three binary gates is closed, it blocks the upward flow of the voice of the soul. The whole system gets gummed up, runs dry, or simply stops working. This manifests in the forms of depression, anxiety, severe confusion, stops and starts, career frustration, emptiness, no sense of purpose, strong sense of unfulfillment in life, boredom, great negativity, and so many more ways. While I've done decades of work with the poor and homeless, I have also made a fruitful and very exciting living working with tons of people who have it all. Great house, great career, great spouse, great kids, great income. Everything seems great, but they are ridiculously unhappy, including great unrest in the soul and great anxiety in the head. All the actions, principles, and core beliefs seem to be just peachy, but something is so obviously amiss. It all tracks back to these three binary gates. The three binary gates are the most powerful beliefs driving your life in every way. Each is binary. It's either open or closed, on or off, full or zero. Each is stacked on top of the next, and they increase in intensity and importance the deeper you go, closer to the soul. So right below your core beliefs, the very top of the binary gates, is the first binary gate. It is simply, I am wanted or I am not wanted. The message of this first binary gate was conveyed through the words and deeds of those who were primary in your life, and then confirmed time and again by people throughout your life. Thereby, they become cemented in the soul. Somewhere in life, you got one of two overriding messages. Either I am wanted or I am not wanted. If you got the message, I'm not wanted, this message became an immovable, impenetrable source of core negativity and despair, blocking the flow of your true self, rising up from your soul, no matter how pretty life looked on the surface. The child, or adult child, whose first binary gate is flipped to the off or closed position of I'm not wanted, is the one who was ignored, forgotten, or pushed away. This is the kid who had the overwhelming siblings that stole all the attention in the home. This is the kid who, no matter what he or she did, couldn't get a pat on the back or a kind word to save his or her life. No matter where this child turned, he got no attention. He just could not find anyone to pour love into his love cup, contributing greatly to a feeling of being alone in the world. Where the average child is always trying to get his love cup filled, this child often becomes very desperate very early. A massive contortion of the self begins, so as to become whatever he must become to get someone, anyone, to pour love into his love cup. I have had clients who have distinct memories of feeling this way as young as 3 or 4 years old. To feel that no one loves you leads to great emptiness and great desperation. This child, and later adult child, will do anything to get love, positive attention, or even the slightest amount of niceness from another person, often engaging in risky or self-destructive behaviors to do so. This person will engage in the pattern of behavior of giving far more love than they ever get. This is because at the core they believe that's all they're worth. They're just happy to get any love and give up far too much love to get any small portion they ever receive. They'll spend their lives blaming mates or lovers or claiming they have had a bad picker inside them that seems to always pick the wrong guys or women. But the real problem resides much deeper, inside their own sense of unwantedness. If or when this person does get love, it is never, ever enough. And this person will chase unceasingly the source of any such positive attention or niceness. Sadly, this person is easily manipulated by others, deliberately or not, who innately sense the desperation behind their pursuit. Eventually, this person simply begins attracting people who don't challenge this not wanted belief, but simply confirm it in word and deed. Do you wonder why you have people in your life who don't give you love or only seem to take, whether it be time, energy, goodwill, or emotional health from you? It's because those people are the most familiar. They mirror precisely what you received by the most significant people in your life growing up. Interacting with them would be grating or annoying for many people, but for you, they're hand in glove. Even for as much as you hate them or they drive you crazy, their way of treating you is familiar and thus, oddly, safe. Your experience of people who are in your life but don't want you is that there is no love flowing toward you or into your life from them, except that they meet the most basic requirement. They're here with me, and that's all. But in an odd way, that feels like enough, even though it in no way is. Maybe you're the giver, giving and giving and giving love, getting never enough in return. The way we feel wanted is that there is a positive balance of love and energy flowing back and forth. We feel someone giving love to us. One big effect of not feeling love or wanted is that the child very easily translates this into even more powerful negative belief. A child's mind very naturally converts "I'm not wanted" into "I'm no good" and "I'm not worthy of love." Unwanted becomes unworthy. What was formerly an external problem, no one around to pour love into me, has now sought a cause, a reason for the external problem. External goes internal. Something must be wrong with me. I suck. And it's actually somewhat understandable for a child's mind to be doing this. There is some measure of logic to it, even if it's a horrible thing that is happening. The second binary gate below the core beliefs is the simple yet extremely powerful belief, I'm good, or I'm not good enough, or it can be, I'm a great person, or I suck. Again, it's binary, either on or off, one or the other, open or closed. This is the really, really powerful place in which most people feel their stuckness. Some can even see it clearly and articulate it. They know their own sense of self-loathing. It's the second most powerful binary gate. There are many ways the second binary gate gets closed. This gate is not just about someone not getting positive attention and love and then converting that to self-suckery. As with the first binary gate, this is about getting very clear negative messages and criticism. This is the girl who brought home her second grade report card with 7 A's on it, and mom's first response was, "Yeah, but why'd you get this C?" Or it's the boy who was told after scoring 2 goals, yet fanning on the puck in front of the net in the third, which would have given the win, "You're an embarrassment." No matter what, this kid was never good enough. And the kid who feels they're never good enough translates that message of not good enough from mom or dad or both very easily into not good or even bad. Hear me again. In the mind of a child, not good enough very easily becomes not good, very easily becomes bad. And the binary gate closes. Unless a distinction is made for a child between the action and the child's very identity when they're being scolded, the child, being a child, will quite naturally equate the parent's condemnation of the action with a condemnation of the child himself. The child's identity becomes the messages conveyed consistently. And make no mistake, regardless of what you think your surface or literal message is, the child very much picks up on the underlying message that they're not good enough or no good at all. That's just how a child's mind works. And that is the message that gets pressed into the wet cement. That is how a parent can go through life believing they did wonderfully in their parenting. And yet, the child, as he or she becomes an adult child, has a very different interpretation. This is especially true if the criticism comes many times over the course of a childhood, and it's quite reasonable to assume that if a kid got such messages once or twice, the kid got such messages a heck of a lot more times than that. For a deliberate parent makes many mistakes, just like every other parent, but the type of mistake doesn't regularly repeat. i.e., the deliberate parent doesn't consistently make the same mistake, particularly when it holds the potential for impacting the child's very identity. So if it happened twice, it likely happened more than twice. And so the kid made the quite natural leap from judging action to judging identity, precisely as the parent did. It's such an easy jump for a child from I did bad to I am bad. The former is the judgment of a solitary action. The latter is the indictment of the child's entire character. Or, in worst case scenarios, the kid was flat out told by a critical, even abusive parent, grandparent, or aunt or uncle that they were bad. No jump required. How many times have you heard a child scolded by a parent by being told, "You're being a bad boy. You're being a bad girl"? It's not the action that is being condemned by the parent in that moment. It is the child's very identity. The resulting effect on the child's love cup is that it distinctly and powerfully got something else put in it other than love. It got crud. Rocks, sludge, crap, and more rocks and crud. The child who was taught to believe that she was not good enough, no good, or just plain bad, began to experience the love cup filling with negative messages. And those don't go away just because she is getting small amounts of love from other sources. It's possible to have an open first gate, but a closed second gate. But because the second gate is bigger and far more powerful, it can do more damage by being closed, obstructing far more flow of soul up and outward to full expression. Where the person with a closed first binary gate has few or no sources of love at all, the person with a closed second binary gate experienced the insertion of powerful negative messages. Those messages usually started as judgments about her performance and behaviors in life, but quickly translated in the mind of the child into judgments about actual self-worth. Again, the parent of the child may have inserted these rocks and crud messages deliberately or accidentally, in words or in actions or inactions. But the underlying message was always there. The negative messaging got in, stuck, stayed, and calcified. If these messages of no good or not good enough were repeated, they became the very messages imprinted in the wet cement of the child's soul. Permanent internal negative programming, undermining every success, caused 2 steps back for every one forward, increasing internal emptiness, even if external greatness expanded. This child, who received explicit or even implicit criticism of being not good enough, undergoes a radical change. She begins to fear any reminder of that message that was pressed into the cement of her soul. You're not good enough. So she created a life where there is no external hint of not good enough, no potential for criticisms of inadequacy. Everything becomes the quest to hide the real self. The second gate is the gate of high achievers and far too many women nowadays. These are the tenured professors, multi-billionaires, millionaires, CEOs, and extreme go-getters. Life for these folk often looks super great on the surface. This woman looks totally put together, on top of it all, succeeding and up and coming. But she is chased by the dark demon of belief deep inside that nothing she does is ever good enough. She is forever proving herself, forever seeking higher praise, forever running, all the while thinking, maybe this will get me the praise that Mom never gave me. And let it be known, this message of not good enough or you're inadequate is being passed from one generation to the next just as prevalently by mothers as by fathers nowadays. And it is always driven by a parent whose own love cup is filled with the exact same crud or is just plain empty altogether. The crud in this child's or adult child's love cup is basically manure and stones. This person is quite literally full of crap messages, spiritual poop, and heavy negative spiritual rocks. And that's why the depression and heavy feelings kick in. The person feels just plain heavy inside. I'm of the belief that the damage done to a child by spiritual abuse exceeds that of physical abuse. Physical scars eventually fade, but the messages of spiritual abuse, which are what this chapter is about, haunt and run lives amok, well into middle age or later. These are inordinately powerful messages, particularly because they were implanted when just a child. The power of a parent over a child, as well as the extreme level of trust that a child has for a parent, combine to imbue any message with absolute certainty and the very power of the gods themselves. As he ages, this child can fit only the tiniest amounts of love or positive attention into her love cup because it is so filled with negative messaging. He is quite literally full of shit. And until that crud is both identified and extracted someday, there can be no joy. This kid is simply incapable of believing they're good and lovable because they're so full of precisely the opposite messaging. This is the kid who becomes a depressed adult, a neurotic and high anxiety adult, an adult who just can't seem to figure out what the problem is with her life, how she can have it all and still be miserable inside. This child or adult at some point begins trying to escape the reality of what's going on inside her. This is the manure pile and rocks from which eating disorders spring, as well as Xanax, dependency, pot addiction, infidelity, bulimia, drug use, risky sexual behavior, and so much more. Life becomes two-faced, forever trying to be perfect on the surface and forever trying to escape her own head when not trying to be perfect. This crud that fills the love cup, that is to say, the soul, is that which blocks the flow of her true spirit and true voice rising up from within her. All of the fear-driven perfection and negative messages block her soul from expressing herself. Nothing of the true self is allowed to see the light of the day. Instead, forced down into the darkest recesses of oneself. Showing the true self to the world would mean risking the most painful type of criticism. For it is one thing to be criticized occasionally for the fake you have become, but it is infinitely more terrifying to ever be criticized when showing the real you to the world, as you did when you were a child and first felt that deep sting of criticism. The most powerful part of your life that you're completely unaware of. The third binary gate. Yet for as treacherous to the soul as the first and second binary gates are, they pale in comparison to the power of the third and final gate. This is the gate closest to the soul that often closes simultaneously with one of the upper gates. This bottom gate is the one that controls the whole system. Everything, all of your life, boils down to this one gate. The third gate gets closed when a young girl or boy gets that message that his grades weren't good enough, or when that child brings home an art project from preschool only to have mother or father say with a scowl, "Why'd you use purple?" Or has a mom who rarely leaves the bedroom and is depressed and bedridden, and the kids go on about cooking, doing laundry, and fending for themselves. Or when the boy asks Dad to play catch, but Dad regularly says he doesn't have time. Or when Mom is too busy with her business to not just be around for the child, but to not even be fully present when she is around the child. Or when Dad is an alcoholic whom everyone in the family is on eggshells around, fearful of when he will explode next. Or when the grandparents or favorite uncle always seem to favor a sibling. Or when there's a sibling that naturally gets a lot of attention, or when Mom is gone most of the time to be at her boyfriend's house, leaving the kids to cook and clean for themselves. Or when there is no mom or grandpa to tell a girl she ought not get into drugs in middle school. Or when the 6-year-old puts on a theater production in the garage with neighborhood kids only to be met with condescension or criticism from an insensitive parent. Or when there's a golden child in the family and you ain't it. When any such events happen to a child, the message the child gets is who you really are is irrelevant. You need to become what I want you to be. The person with a closed third binary gate believes the real me doesn't matter, or the real me simply doesn't exist. The third binary gate is I matter, I don't matter. More accurately, the real me matters, or the real me doesn't matter. The first binary gate is about the child's external world. No one wants to give me love. The second binary gate is about the child's internal world. I suck, or I'm not good enough. The third binary gate is existential. The real me doesn't matter or even exist. The first binary gate is an assessment of external reality. The second binary gate is an assessment of internal reality, a value judgment. The third binary gate is not about good or bad, but whether the person's true self even matters. And that is a nuanced but significant difference. What makes the third binary gate so long-lastingly more powerful is that it is not merely about value, but about the very existence of the child, the real identity of the child, as opposed to that child's function in the parent's life. It is an existential pronouncement. The real me doesn't matter, it just doesn't exist. To say someone or something doesn't exist is incredibly powerful, but that is what the parent is doing. Or, for example, if the parent uses the child to dump the parent's problems onto, The child's significance and existence gets minimized, even negated. This far too common occurrence instills in the child several messages, not the least of which is, you exist to serve my needs, very often my emotional needs, or your problems don't matter, mine do, or mine, by natural extension, me, matter more than yours and you. Such as is often also conveyed by the alcoholic or abusive parent. This is a very easy message for a child to get. For example, it may start from a parent saying, I'm sorry I'll miss your dinner, soccer game, school play, birthday party, but I have work and work is important. If it happens enough times, the child very easily and naturally can translate this into, work is more important than me, which is a small step from, I'm not important, eventually becoming, I don't matter. This may seem silly or even easily surmountable for an adult, but it's neither silly nor easy for an adult, because it has become written in the cement of that adult's soul, and it's inordinately powerful for a child. This is exactly how a child's mind thinks. Actions carry meanings. Carried out enough time, these actions become meanings that a child takes on as part of his or her identity, pressed into the wet cement of her soul, and this is never good. What happens when a child gets any of these messages, but particularly the third one, is that she says, screw this pain, and without even knowing it, she takes the real me, sticks it in an imaginary cigar box, wraps that box in hardcore duct tape, and sticks that box way down deep inside herself, under the bed, deep inside, next to the Christmas sweaters, never to be opened again. This child then becomes whomever he or she has to be to win positive attention and, more importantly, avoid negative attention or criticism. So painful is the message, the real you doesn't matter, that the single biggest fear of life becomes showing the world who you really are. The rest of his or her life is spent hiding, running from the pain, and living in some form or another of soul misery. Period. End of story. For any sort of criticism from childhood forward becomes a highly charged reminder of that pain from childhood, when it was conveyed to her in no uncertain actions that who she really is just doesn't matter. It becomes a highly, highly charged memory or series of memories. Why? The effect of that third binary gate being closed is that a hole gets punched in the bottom of the love cup. And that hole is small enough to keep in any solid crud and rocks of negative messages that may come in, yet big enough to drain out all the liquid love of positive messages. This is huge. A hole in the bottom of the love cup of the soul changes everything, effectively negating the ability to acquire and pool any feelings of love inside. A love cup with a hole in the bottom means the bearer will never feel loved or feel good except in fleeting moments of ecstasy from some sort of drug or experience. No matter how much love gets poured in, it only touches the cup and then passes outward. Poke a hole in a styrofoam cup, then pour water into it from a pitcher. Run your finger along the inside of a cup after you've poured the water and it has drained out. The inside walls of the cup are moist. There is residue of the love poured through, but it is only residue, only a reminder. The love never pools inside the cup. It just teases and is gone. Believing in the very negation of his existence, this child or adult child is simply incapable of containing love. It simply drains out. There is never enough coming in. It may feel good passing through, but it never stays. The child as adult may have everything in life, all the successes and veneer of having it together, but deep inside, pressed into the very bedrock of his soul, is the belief that the real me doesn't matter. For this person to feel loved, there must always be something or someone external. She can't feel love or even feel good by herself because herself is empty, or maybe empty of love. Instead, she's full of crud messages. This person is forever dependent upon her exterior life to feed her interior life and thereby pour love into her. And quite frankly, there is never enough love or love sources. By the way, this person as a parent bleeds her children of their life energy, whether they're aware of it or not. She's a spiritual vampire. However, the worst part about the hole in the bottom of the love cup is that this person has a visceral feeling of hopelessness. When there's a hole in the bottom of the love cup, there's literally no hope of ever being filled up with love. How could there be? Any love that flows in is gone just as soon as it arrived. The growing awareness of the unending emptiness of the cup inside quite naturally is experienced as hopelessness. A hole in the love cup means there's no hope of ever being filled with love, and this produces anxiety, high anxiety, a franticness, and a powerful deep depression that most people, therapists and clergy, can never quite put their finger on. Like that damn squirrel frantically foraging for nuts before winter, this person feels the coming winter and is certain of the instant depletion of anything good that comes. Certain of death, there is always a looming sorrow. And so the reason people engage in all manner of negative actions, bad behaviors, or paths that hold the potential to greatly screw up their lives is because they live in fear of running out of love. So they frantically forage in all directions, no matter how dangerous those directions may be. Driving it all is the fear of showing the world who they really are, because they've been told their real self just does not matter. They've been wounded at the very deepest level. So they keep the surface clean and engage in all manner of escapism beneath the surface, out of sight from judging and criticizing eyes. They cannot find love and honest ways of standing up for their needs because they do not believe that their own needs truly matter or even exist. They simply are incapable of believing that they even have worth enough to ask. They don't matter. At least not their real self. The only pseudo-mattering is the fake self, the persona they've laboriously built over decades. For it is that persona that others feed off of, give approval to, and deem to matter. And it's all a lie. Marital infidelity, for example, that hidden form of foraging for cheap and unfair positive attention and life energy, is always rooted in the fear of truly showing my real self to my spouse, not to mention the world. Because such vulnerability is unthinkable. It's way too scary. In no small part because the relationship was built on my being this fake self. Rather than stand up and speak one's truth, rather than be strong and insist on what life would truly make him happy, this person hides his real self out of sheer terror. Cheating is always generated by fear. Always. The power of the third gate is that it keeps people locked in fake lives that are inherently unfulfilling, mind-numbing, and soul-crushing. It keeps the real you forever hidden. Everything is driven by fear. And this is weakness. The imprinting of this message into the cement of a soul is so strong that the original source of the message could have long ago faded away, but it still rings in the head of the one who received it. This great lie, you don't matter, that got imprinted in the soul is so powerful that it becomes the person's own identity. The voice of the parent becomes indistinguishable from the child's own adult voice. He thinks he hates himself. He thinks he is his own worst critic, when really it was a lie that was implanted. Someone else's hate or indifference was the implanter. Worst of all, the voice or actions of the parent are no longer needed for the perpetuation of this completely debilitating message. The adult child owns it now. Look out if that parent who was the original source of the message dies. Don't think the message dies with the parent. Quite the opposite. Very, very often, death often makes it 10 times worse because the parent and her message are then viewed with nostalgia and a certain gravitas we afford only the dead. It becomes much more difficult to extract the voice in this case. And very often, it's because the person in whom the parental voice resides feels guilt over saying anything bad about the deceased parent. And the message inside just runs on this infinite, never-ending loop. I don't matter. The real me doesn't matter. I don't matter. On and on. Forever sucking the life out of your very soul. You no longer own yourself, but are owned by an external power source that has been internalized. and decades of pain ensue, no matter how good and perfect you may look on the outside. The source of all your pain in life is the fear of becoming the real you. To be, say, do, and become on the outside that which you are in the deepest depths of your insides is unthinkable. The fear of speaking your truth and living your real self are at the root of it all. It is the fear of what others will think, say, and do if you show the world who you really are. Tragically, you will never be happy until you do the one thing you're most afraid of. Remove the fear, and then be, say, do, have, look like, live wherever, and become that which your soul is calling you to. Until you become the real you. Until you finally matter to you. There will be no joy, no lasting peace, no fulfillment, and no cessation to the running and anxiety that grip your soul. Song recommendation. You want some real good spiritual stuff? Download and listen to Let Me Be Myself by Three Doors Down.